Good morning, all of you. Welcome to Spring Boot and microservices sessions. In the last session, we have seen what is the roadmap to become a Java developer. As a Java developer, what are the technologies, what are the tools that we have to learn? Core Java, advanced Java, data structures, design patterns, SQLs. So whether you are a fresher or whether you are a experienced, then you need to learn all these things first. This is the part one. Core Java, advanced Java, data structures, algorithms, design patterns, SQL. If you go for any company interview, then these things are important. Now after that, to develop front end part of the application, then you need to learn web technologies. You need to learn the web technologies. So what are the web technologies? HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Bootstrap, Angular, or React. Either Angular or React, any one is sufficient for developing the front end part of the application, web technologies. So these are the basic things that you need to know. Then if you want to develop the front end part of the application, then you need to know these web technologies also. After this, Java frameworks, right? In the application, the project will be developed in the real time by using these concepts. Nowadays, in every project, these concepts will be available. ORM framework will be available to develop persistence layer of the application. By using this Hibernate, we can develop persistence layer. Then after, Spring framework is available to develop end-to-end application, like web layer of the application, business layer of the application, as well as persistence layer of the application also can be developed by using this Spring framework. So Spring is very famous in the market. Nowadays, every project is getting developed by using Spring. But here in the Spring, there is a small problem, that is configuration. We need to do the configurations manually when we go for this Spring framework. Configurations we need to take care in the Spring framework. Now, to avoid these configuration problems, Spring released Spring Boot. Spring Boot is just a extension for the Spring framework. From the Spring framework only, Spring Boot came into market. From the Spring framework only, Spring Boot came into market. Now, so this Spring Boot is hot cake in the industry. Every Java project is using Spring Boot to develop the applications. So what is the definition for the Spring Boot? In the last session, we have seen what is the definition for the Spring Boot. Spring Boot is just one approach to develop Spring based applications with less configurations. So what is Spring Boot? Spring Boot is just one approach to develop Spring based applications with less configurations. Spring Boot came into market with the auto configuration concept. Auto configuration means whatever the configuration required for the project, that will be provided by Spring Boot only. Spring Boot will take care of the configurations required for our application. We can do application rapid development. We can do rapid development using Spring Boot. What is the meaning of rapid development? You no need to focus on the infrastructure. You no need to focus on the configurations. Configurations will be taken care by Spring Boot. You just need to focus on your business logic. Very quickly, you can set up your application by using Spring Boot. Spring Boot is just one approach to develop Spring based applications. Guys, Spring Boot means it's not a separate framework developed by another company. No, whoever developed Spring framework, they only given the Spring Boot for us to develop the Spring applications easily. So whatever the applications you can develop by using Spring, same kind of applications can be developed by using Spring Boot also. Got my point? So in the Spring framework, you can develop a web application. In the Spring framework, you can develop a web service. In the Spring framework, you can develop a REST API. But the configurations you have to write. Same thing. Web application we can develop by using Boot, and web service we can develop by using Boot. REST API you can develop by using Boot. The thing is, configuration will be taken care by Boot. So Spring Boot is developed based on the Spring framework only. All the concepts available in the Spring framework we can use in the Spring Boot also. All right, next one, REST APIs. Very important. REST API. REST APIs are used to develop distributed application. If one application, if one project is communicating with another project, then it is called as distributed application. How to develop distributed applications in the Java? To develop the distributed applications in the Java, we are using RESTful services. Now, example I have given, Make My Trip will communicate with IRCTC, Swiggy app will communicate with the restaurant applications, right? Make My Trip will communicate with the airlines, all like this. One bank application is communicating with another bank application through GPay or PhonePe. So many scenarios are there in the real time. Why one application is going to communicate with the another application? If one application is communicating with another application, then they are called as distributed. To develop the distributed applications, we are going for these REST APIs. Then after, we are going for microservices architecture. Microservice is not a technology, it is just one architectural design pattern. Microservices is just one architectural design pattern. Earlier, people used to develop everything in one project. Earlier, people used to develop everything in one project. If you create a single project for everything, then it is called as monolith architecture. Nowadays, people are dividing the functionality to multiple APIs. So for every requirement, one API will be created. So this is called as microservices architecture. Microservices architecture not specific to only Java. Any technology project can be implemented by using microservices. So we are going to spend almost 1 month of time to understand this microservices. Very good. Next one is security. What is this security? For every application, we have to implement security, right? How to secure our applications, how to protect our applications, how to perform authorization, how to perform authentication, how to implement role-based security. What is the meaning of role-based security? So suppose a project administrator should be able to access all the functionalities in the project. A normal user should be able to access only limited functionalities in the project. How to implement OAuth based security, how to implement JWT security, how to implement basic authentication, how to implement authorization, how to secure our REST APIs. All those things we are going to learn as part of this security. Are you clear with my point? Now, here in this course, we are going to understand these concepts, guys. In this course, we are going to understand this line. These concepts we are going to understand, basically Java frameworks we are going to learn here. Next, after here, we are going to understand some tools are required for you as a Java developer. Every Java developer should know these tools like Maven, GitHub. Maven is a build tool to create the project, to compile the project, to package the project. We are going to use Maven. GitHub is a source code repository. So developers are writing the code. That code should be integrated in one place. That place is called as a GitHub. Source code integration will be done in the GitHub. SonarQube is a software which is used to perform the code review. You are going to write several lines of Java code. How that Java code you have implemented? Are you following the naming conventions? Is there any problem in your code? Is there any bug in your code? Is there any vulnerability in your code? Is there any duplicated lines of code available? All those mistakes done by the developers in the code can be identified by using SonarQube software. Okay, next one is Log4j. Log4j is used to implement logging for our application. So when the application is executing, we want to understand the execution details, which method executed, right? What exception occurred? What is the root cause of the problem? All those things we need to trace. For that, we are going to implement logging in our application. Now, for our application, we need to perform unit testing. To perform the unit testing, we will use JUnit and mocking. So JUnit is a framework which is used to implement unit testing for our application. What is a unit testing? Whatever the method we implement, whatever the method you develop in the Java project, Is that method working as expected or not? We have to test. So a unit amount of work we are going to test. You are going to, developer means not only writing the code. Developer means you need to make sure whatever the code you write, that code is executing as expected. So everybody can write the code, but the thing is, whatever the code you write, that code should be executed as expected. For that, we are going to use JUnit to perform the unit testing. As part of the JUnit, we are going to work with the mocking. So instead of testing with the real objects, we are going to create the spy objects, dummy objects by using this mock framework. So we will understand what is that JUnit and what is the mocking also. Next one is Jenkins, guys. Jenkins is a CI/CD software which is used to deploy the applications automatically. Whenever you change some code in the project, that latest code should be deployed into server directly. That CI/CD we are going to implement by using Jenkins. CI/CD we are going to implement by using Jenkins. So now mostly DevOps people are going to work with that Jenkins software. Mostly DevOps people are going to work with the Jenkins software. In my DevOps classes, I'm explaining what is that Jenkins and how to work with that Jenkins. So in the DevOps batch, I'm teaching that Jenkins concepts. Okay, right, see here. Developers will be doing the coding. Once the developers has done the code, they will push the code into Git repository. Once the code is pushed to Git repository, the Jenkins will be available here. Jenkins will have a job. We need to create the job in the Jenkins. DevOps engineers will create the jobs in the Jenkins. The DevOps job will take the code from the Git repository, will deploy to the servers. Multiple environments will be available in the real time. Dev environment, sit environment, UAT, pilot, prod. Prod is the final environment. So you are a developer, you are writing a code. After your coding is completed, you will do the unit testing. After unit testing completed, you will push your code to Git repository. Git repository is a source code repository server. Then your code should be deployed to servers. There will be multiple servers to run our application for testing purpose. After testing is completed in all the environments, then finally our code will be deployed to production environment. Who is going to do all these deployments in the real time? Jenkins. Jenkins is a CI/CD software. So in which batch I am teaching this Jenkins, guys? Can you see this? In which batch I am teaching this Jenkins? DevOps AWS batch. In DevOps AWS batch, we are teaching the Jenkins. All right, fine. So Jenkins is used for deployment purpose. Then Dockers and Kubernetes, hotcakes in the market. Docker is a containerization platform. Kubernetes is a orchestration platform. We will understand them. Next one, Apache Kafka. Apache Kafka is a message broker. If you want to exchange the messages from one application to another application, if you want to develop event-driven microservices, then we will go for Apache Kafka platform. Apache Kafka platform. Okay. Next one, JMeter. JMeter is a tool which is used to implement performance testing of the application. So we have developed our application. Now, if 1,000 users access our application at a time, how it is going to behave? If 10,000 people access at a time, how it is going to behave? If 1 lakh people access at a time, how it will behave? If 1 crore people access my application at a time, how it will behave? All those tests we will do on the application by using JMeter. JMeter is used to understand stability of the application. Is our application stable for multiple users or not? What is the average response time of the application that we will implement? We will understand that by using this JMeter software. Next one, Jira. Jira is the project management software. Tomorrow when you join in the company, the work will be assigned to you in the Jira software only. For every team member, the work will be assigned in the Jira software only. Earlier, people used to send the work in the email. You have to work on this requirement. But today, in the industry, people are using Jira. Jira is a project management software. People are using Jira as a bug reporting software as well as project management software. For all the team members, weekly, bi-weekly, tasks will be assigned in the Jira. So in the Agile methodology, we will understand what is Agile, what is Jira. Redis cache. I don't want to interact with the database every time to retrieve some static data because database interaction is a costly operation. We need to load the driver. We need to create the connection. We need to execute the query. We need to process the result. We need to close the connections. So the always DB operation is costly. So to reduce number of round trips between Java application and the database, we are going to use this Redis cache. Redis is a distributed cache. When we are implementing the project by using microservices, we are going to use a Redis cache. Here my Redis will be available. Now all the microservices will interact with this Redis cache to improve the performance. Cache we are going to implement by using this Redis. Cache we are going to implement by using this Redis, guys. Cache implementation, distributed cache implementation we will do by using Redis. Next one is the Postman. Postman is used for testing the REST APIs. In the microservices architecture, we are developing several REST APIs. In order to test the REST APIs functionality, we are going to use a Postman software. Postman is a REST API testing tool. REST APIs will be developed by using HTTP protocol. By using that Postman, we will send the HTTP request to the REST API for testing purpose. Okay, next one. Swagger is available. Swagger is used for generating documentation for the REST API. I have developed one REST API. Other company want to access my REST API. How other company will understand my API details, documentation about my API. Suppose I developed one REST API to book a train ticket. How can you access my API? You need to know the details of my API. I will provide my API details to you by using Swagger documentation. By using Swagger documentation. Okay, all these things. Next one, Linux. As a developer, we will be using the Windows machine to do the development, but in the real time, projects deployments will happen in the Linux operating system. In the real time, project deployment will happen in the Linux operating system. In order to deploy the project, as I have shown you, we need several environments. So environment, nothing but a server, a computer, a server, a database. We need the infrastructure. Dev environment, sit environment. Dev means developers will use it for testing purpose. Sit means testers will use it for testing purpose. UAT means user acceptance testing. Client will use the environment for testing purpose. Pilot means pre-production with live data testing. Prod means live environment. Like this, so many environments, so many servers, so many database instances we need. It is difficult for us to manage all these things. That's the reason we are going for AWS cloud platform, Amazon Web Services. AWS platform, AWS cloud, nothing but it will provide infrastructure for rent. It will give computers for rent. It will give servers for rent. It will give database for rent. It will give storage for rent. It will give network for rent. Whatever the infrastructure you need to run your application, we are going to use this AWS cloud, Amazon Web Services. There are so many cloud platforms available in the market, like Amazon, AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google GCP, VMware PCF, Oracle Cloud, IBM Cloud, Alibaba Cloud. Like that, there are so many cloud platforms are available who will provide softwares for rent. Are you able to understand? In the company, I don't want to purchase the computers. I don't want to purchase servers. I don't want to purchase databases because purchasing means lot of money I have to invest. Even after purchasing, I need to recruit the employees to set up the infrastructure, set up the computer, set up the network, set up the power, set up AC, set up security, purchase the servers. Lot of money, lot of time required. That's why I will pay the money to AWS. I will take the softwares for rent to run my application. That is called infrastructure I'm going to take for rent. Next one, DevOps is available. What is the meaning of DevOps? DevOps is a culture which is used to deploy and deliver the applications easily. DevOps is a culture which is used to deploy and deliver the applications to the customers easily. Now let me show you a DevOps diagram, DevOps flow of execution. how the DevOps processes will be used in the companies. Okay, now let me show you the DevOps diagram. Yep. So this is how the DevOps process will be available in the companies. This is how DevOps process will be available in the companies. Guys, in the real time, the infrastructure, the servers will be available in the AWS cloud. EC2 instances will be available. In that EC2 instance, web servers will be installed, like our Tomcat servers will be installed in the AWS cloud EC2 machine. Then developers will be available. We are the developers. We will develop the project by using Maven software. Maven is a build tool for us. We will create the project by using Maven. We will download the dependencies by using Maven. Project compilation, project packaging, unit test execution, everything. The build operation will be done by Maven. Once all the development tasks are completed, all the developers will push the code to Git repository. Once the code is pushed to Git repository, there will be a software called Jenkins software. Jenkins is used for build and deployment automation. Jenkins will download the code from Git repository. Jenkins will compile the project, will package the project using Maven. Jenkins will review the code. Code quality check will be done by using SonarQube. Once all these things are done by the Jenkins, Jenkins will deploy our project war file to the server, which is available in the AWS cloud. This is called development. This is called operation. Development plus operations is called DevOps. So you need to have some idea on the DevOps also in the industry, because once your development completed, you need to understand how the project is deploying into the servers. Where is your server? Where is your infrastructure? So as a developer, you need to have the idea on this area also. Sir, I am a developer. I will just develop my code. After development, how your code is executing, where your code is executing, how your code is deploying. All these things you need to know. Understand my point, guys? In the market, people will tell you, if you know Java, if you know core Java, advanced Java, you will get the job. That is a wrong statement. I'm working in the company. I know what are the things are required for the developer. Developers should be all-rounders. Developers should know each and everything. From coding to till deployment, developers should have the idea. Otherwise, you cannot survive. Did anybody explain to you that you need to know all these things as a Java developer in the industry? Did any of you explain? You have done core Java, you have done advanced Java, you have done Spring, you have done Hibernate. Nobody will explain you because they don't know how things are happening in the real time. I'm working in the company, a top most banking company. I'm working, US based banking company. It is a product based company. We are dealing with 150 projects for one bank. All these things are required. All these things are required. I am working with my project development. I will be working on Spring Boot microservices. Front end, I am working on Angular. I'm working on all the tools. I will set up my project infrastructure in the AWS cloud. I will create the jobs in the Jenkins. I will manage each and everything required for my project. I'm a full stack developer. Full stack developer. That is the trending in the market. If you just know Java, then what you can do? You can just to do the development. Then what about the deployment? How your code will be running in the server, how to create the server, that also you should know. Then only you are called as a Java full stack developer. Then only company will give you more salary. If you know just core Java, advanced Java, Spring Boot, not sufficient. Not sufficient. Slowly, I will make you the Java full stack developer, guys. You need to spend 3 to 4 months of time with me. Then you will understand this complete process. You need to spend 3 to 4 months of time with me, complete real time. How I am working in my company, what are the tools I am using in my project, how I am doing the development, what are the real time scenarios I am getting, what are the challenges I have faced in my career, everything, my life experience I am going to share with you. I have spent 9 years in the industry, a lot of experience, lot of challenges, lot of struggles. Now you see, we are teaching DevOps course also. Now this is the DevOps batch, evening 8:30 p.m. Evening 8:30 p.m. DevOps batch is going on. What is Agile methodology? What is a sprint? What is a waterfall? Everything we are explaining in the DevOps also. The reason I'm working with the DevOps also in the company. Yesterday only I have explained Jenkins for them. Are you guys able to install Jenkins? Yesterday night, the first class happened for the Jenkins. Yesterday night, the first class happened for the Jenkins. I am able to deploy war file into Tomcat server in EC to AWS. This was the previous session in the DevOps. Everything you should know as a Java developer, it is important. It is the fact. Sir, you have listed so many courses here. Nobody will tell you this reality. If the people tell you that in the core Java, if you want to become a Java developer, you need to learn all these things. If I tell that in the core Java classes, you will not learn Java. So many things are there to learn. I think I cannot learn all these things. It's better to go for testing course. So if we tell this fact in the core Java and advanced Java, will you really learn the Java? Students always want the job immediately. Students wants the jobs immediately. They don't want to spend the time for learning. They want job, they want salary. कौन देगा भाई? आपका पापा को सॉफ्टवेयर कंपनी नहीं है, मेरा पापा को सॉफ्टवेयर कंपनी नहीं है. To give the job within 1 month or 2 months, you have to learn the things. You have to get the hands-on experience. You need to make your hands dirty in the coding and in the deployments in the IT industry, in the IT trending technologies. Then only you will get the job. Now I have learnt all these things. Did I learn all these things in 1 year? Now I can work with all these things. How much time I spent to learn all these things? 9 years. There is a lot of time I have spent. Now for you also to learn all these things overnight, it is not possible. It is not a BTech exam just to study before the exam date. You have to spend the time. It will take time. Once you learn all these things which I am displaying in this diagram, then you are master. You are hot cake. How much package you want, company will give you that much. Okay, don't get scared. Slowly you are going to learn all these things, but you need to spend the time. You need to be dedicated. You need to be focused. Then it is possible. 3 to 4 months of time. 3 to 4 months of time. I will give you the complete picture how the work is happening in the industry. How the work is happening in the industry. Do you know why AhokIT is famous for the Spring Boot microservices in the market? Because real time. Do you know why Ashok? How you all people came for Spring Boot microservice in AhokIT? Maybe because of references only. So we don't do any marketing outside. Our institute is very new. It is just started 2 years back. But why these many people are coming for us? It's all about mouth publicity. The people who learned the course in AhokIT, they will recommend their friends because the quality is there, the real time is there. That is the reason we are unique in the market for Spring Boot microservices, Java real-time project, DevOps, AWS. We will teach the real-time content, how people are working in the industry, how I am working in the industry. I'm not just teaching the course, I'm sharing my experience, how I am working in the company, what work I am doing in the company, what tools I'm using, what concepts I'm using. Everything we are explaining in our course. That is the reason you see yesterday so many people got the jobs. Yesterday so many people got the jobs. In the last week, of time, so many people got the jobs in AhokIT. As a fresher, some people got the job. As a experienced, some people got the job. Java people, Spring Boot people, Java people, Spring Boot people, DevOps people got the jobs. Now you see here, these are the people who got selected in the last week. IBM, Tech Mahindra, HP, Ericsson, Stratus, Persistent. These people are previous batch students got the jobs in the last week. 13 lakhs, 13 lakhs, 13.5, 12 lakhs, 12 lakhs, 12. This person got the job as a fresher, 4.1 lakhs. This person got with experience Spring Boot, 9 lakhs package. Every week, the people are getting jobs in our institute. The reason? Quality content. So you guys also will get that kind of jobs with decent packages, but you need to be dedicated with me for 3 to 4 months. Then it is possible. Then it is possible. Got my point? All right. Now, next one. Guys, here, ultimate goal, you need to become a full stack developer. You need to become a full stack developer. Application development. Application development. Application development is divided into two parts, guys. Application development divided into two parts. Application development divided into two parts. One is called as backend development. One is called as backend development. Second one is called as front-end development. Backend development is available. Front-end development is available. Backend plus front-end development. Backend development plus front-end development is called as full stack development. So if you can develop the project backend as well as front-end, then you are called as a full stack developer. Backend development plus front-end development. Can anyone tell me what is backend development and what is front-end development? Guys, can you tell me what is backend development and what is front-end development? What is the backend development? What is front-end development? I want your responses, guys. You need to be very responsive in the session. Respond in the chat. Session should be interactive. Session should be interactive. What is the backend development? Backend. Backend contains the business logic. Backend contains business logic of our application. Backend contains the business logic of our application. Web service calls, validations, email sending, email logic, right? DB communication, all these things will be available in the backend. Backend contains business logic of our application. Front-end contains user interface of the application. Front-end contains user interface of the application, UI, presentation logic. Front-end nothing but presentation logic. Backend nothing but business logic. Now, earlier, companies used to recruit back-end developers separately, front-end developers separately, but nowadays, companies are expecting one person to do both back-end development and front-end development. Any developer who can develop back-end part of the application and the front-end part of the application is called as full stack developer. Full stack development means you should be able to develop front-end part of the application. You should be able to develop back-end part of the application. The developers who can develop both back-end and front-end development, who can do the developers who can do both back-end and front-end development, they are called as full stack developers. Full stack development nothing but back-end development plus front-end development. Okay, now guys, generally in the Java full stack developer means Java backend we are going to develop. That means backend we are going to develop and front end also we are going to develop. Now see here, for our application, front end will be available and back end will be available. So this is our back end of the application, and this is front end of our application. Back end will be available, front end will be available. From the front end, request will go to the back end, and back end will execute that request and will send the response to the front end. Backend will execute and backend will send the response to the front end. The backend application is going to communicate with the database. The backend application is going to communicate with the database to store the data, update the data, retrieve the data, and delete the data. These things are going to happen with the database. Front end, back end, database. Now, in order to develop this front end, in order to develop this front end, we are going to use HTML and CSS, basic things that you need to know. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Bootstrap. Some companies will use Angular, some companies will use React. These are the technologies that we are going to use to develop our front end part of the application. Front end part of the application. In the back end, we are using Java, we are using Java, we are using Spring Boot, we are using Spring Boot, we are using REST API, we are using Spring Boot, we are using REST API, we are using Data JPA, which is ORM. Then next one, we are going to use microservices architecture. Then we are going to use security. Then we are going to use some Kafka, some Redis, like this. We are going to use in the backend part for our application. And we are going to use some tools also. Maven tool we are going to use, JUnit tool we are going to use, Log4j tool, SonarQube, several tools also we are going to use as part of our backend. Docker we are going to use, and some tools also we are going to use. Here coming to DB, some companies will use Oracle DB, some companies will use MySQL DB, some companies will use MongoDB, some companies will use MongoDB, some companies will use PostgreSQL. Like that, there are several databases also available in the market. So company to project, this databases can change. But Java projects nowadays, all the projects are using all these things. Front end, they are using these things. So now, so to become a Java full stack developer, you need to be clear with all these concepts: front end development, back end development, and databases. So what is the meaning of front end? Front end nothing but user interface presentation. Whatever you are seeing on the website, whatever you are seeing on the website, that is called as a presentation part. Now see here, let's take an example of AhokIT. We have our website. Now, can you see a menu? Can you see the logo? Can you see some buttons here in our website? So can we call it as a front end of our website? Can we call it as a front end of our website? You are able to see logo. You are able to see the menu. You are able to see the blog. When you click on the blog, so here it will display our blog contents. When you click on interview questions, you will go for the interview questions here. When you click on training schedule, online training schedule, what are the new batches are starting? All the details you can see here. So whatever you are able to see, that is called as front end part of the application. That is called as front end part of the application. That front end of the application can be developed by using HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Bootstrap, Angular, or React. So you should know these front end technologies. Next one. Now here, when we go to this website, so there is some backend logic also available. See here, login. I will enter some email ID. I will enter some password. I will click on login button. What is happening? Some logic is executing in the backend, guys, that you cannot see. I have entered my email ID. I have entered my password. I have clicked on the login button. What happened? Is it allowing me to log in, or it is saying invalid email ID and password? It is saying invalid email ID and password. What is the reason? What is the reason? Given email ID password validated by our backend. Whatever the email ID password I have given, that email ID password, it is sent it to the backend. Backend verified that email ID password with the database. In the database, that email ID password not available. That's why it is sending a error message to the front end. So end user will use front end of our application. Now end users will be available. The end users are going to communicate with our application by using front end. End users are going to communicate with our application by using front end. They will send a request to our application front end. Then that front end is going to communicate with the back end. That back end is going to execute the business logic. Backend contains business logic. The main business will be available in the backend. End user can see only front end of the application. He cannot see the backend. End user will use front end of our application. Now see, I will enter my valid credentials. I will click on login. Then as my credentials are valid, I'm able to log in. I can go to dashboard. In the AhokIT, I can see the courses here. My courses, whatever the courses we have purchased here, you can see that Spring Boot microservices. Here Zoom link will be available, Telegram link will be available, course status, course notes, daily class notes also uploaded here. Student can click on this download button. They can download this. See here, last one, I explained them what is Sonar Cube, how to do the code review. How to do the code review, what are the lessons learnt in the code review. Lessons learnt in the code review, nothing but what are the common mistakes we are doing in the coding and how to resolve those mistakes. String buffer should not be used, string builder should be used, exception should be rethrown or exception should be logged. Instead of math.random, use random.nextInt. Don't use the password variable directly, use pwd or password like this. Declare the variables before constructor, remove unnecessary curly braces, camel case variables, constructors, all the naming conventions, coding standards we have to implement. That mistakes we are going to do, identify by using Sonar. In the Spring Boot, I have explained this code review concept also. You can see that the last class that I have explained to them in the Spring Boot. Code review, microservices based mini project implementation, microservices, REST API exception handling, web client examples, REST client development, Heroku, Swagger, IRCTC REST API, consuming, producing, Jackson, Jaxby, RESTful services and microservices. So many things are there. Now, can you see, as a faculty, I will upload the class notes. As a student, you can download the class notes from the website. So here, some front-end logic is available, some back-end logic also available for our project. The back-end is communicating with the database. So this is very bare minimum requirement, bare minimum skill set that you need to know to survive in the industry as a Java developer. Every company is expecting full stack development. You should be able to do front-end development as well as back-end development of your application. If you can do front-end development and back-end development of your application, then you are called as a full stack developer. If you can do front-end development as well as back-end development, then you will be called as a full stack developer. Are you guys able to understand what is full stack development? Are you guys able to understand what is full stack development? Application development divided into two parts, guys. One is backend development. Second one is front-end development. Backend contains the business logic of our application. Web service calls will be available, validations, email logics, DB communications, logics will be available here. Front-end contains user interface of our application. Front-end contains user interface of our application. End users will interact with the front-end of our application. End users interact with the front-end of our application. End users interact with the front-end of our application. Front-end will interact with the back-end of our application. Back-end of our application. Backend will execute the business logic and it will communicate with the database also. Backend will execute business logic. Backend will execute business logic and it will communicate with the database also. It will communicate with database also. Right. The developers who can do both backend development, and front-end development, they are called as full stack developers. Full stack developers are having lot of demand in the market. Full stack developers are having lot of demand in the market. Full stack developers are hotcakes in the market. That means if you are a full stack developer, so many opportunities are available in the IT industry for you to get the job. Full stack developers are hotcakes in the market. Full stack developers are hotcakes in the market. Companies are offering high packages for the full stack developers. Companies are offering high packages for full stack developers. Are you guys clear with me? Are you able to follow me? Or you are sleeping? You understand what is a full stack development? You understand what is a full stack development? What is the meaning of full stack development? Guys, any questions you have, you can ask me at the end. So daily I'm spending 30 minutes of time for your doubts clarifications only. Okay, so if you have any questions, please note down. I will clarify all your doubts at the end. You can talk to me at the end of the session. Okay, right. Application development is divided into two parts. One is a back-end development. Second one is front-end development. So any developer who can do back-end plus front-end, he is called as a full stack developer. So what will be there in the back-end? Back-end contains the business logic of our application. So front-end contains user interface of our application. Now end user is available. End user will interact with our application front-end only. End user will interact with our application front-end only. So now he will perform some operations in the front end. He will click on some buttons in the front end. When he clicks some button in the front end, that request will come to back end. That request will come to back end. In the back end, some logic will be executed. That logic will be executed. That logic will communicate with the database also. Presentation logic plus business logic is called as a full stack development, full stack application. Presentation logic will be developed as separate project, guys. These projects will be developed by using Angular or React. It is one separate project, and this backend is available. Front end will communicate with the backend application. Backend will communicate with the database. So this is called as a full stack development. Now, guys, backend applications can be implemented in two ways. Backend applications can be implemented in two ways. What are the two ways? One is monolith architecture, and the second one is microservices architecture. Monolith versus microservices. You need to understand this also, because the main reason that we are learning Spring Boot is to develop microservices only. What is the difference between monolith architecture and microservices architecture? If we develop all the requirements in the single application, then it is called as monolith architecture. If we develop all the functionalities, if we develop all the functionalities in single project, then it is called as monolith architecture based application. It is called as monolith architecture based application. Client A has given some requirements. So assume that we want to develop one e-commerce application. Assume that we want to develop one e-commerce application. If we develop all the functionalities in single project, then it is called as monolith architecture based application. Now all the functionalities at one place. Now assume that, let me go to one project kind of thing here. Our project is a e-commerce based project, guys. Our project is a e-commerce based project. In this project, what is happening is I am going to develop a functionality for products. I'm developing the functionality for the cart. I'm developing the functionality for checkout. I'm developing the functionality for the payment. I am developing the functionality for tracking. I'm developing the functionality for shipping, and I'm developing the functionality for cancel, and I'm developing the functionality for the reports. Everything we are doing in the one project. All the functionalities are in one project. Then that project is going to communicate with the database. So for every project, the database is also required. My project is communicating with the database. Now, tomorrow, I want to change the functionality in the tracking. I want to change some functionality in the tracking. If I change the code in the tracking module, is there any chance that it will affect in the other modules also? Everything is in single project. If I modify something in one class, will there be any effect on the other classes also? Is there any possibility? Is there any possibility? Possibility is available or possibility is not available, guys? Possibility is available or possibility is not available? Possibility available, possibility not available. Come on, guys. Possibility available or possibility not available? I want to modify the code of the tracking module. Tracking module functionality I want to change. Then if you do the change for the tracking, there will be an impact on the other modules functionality also. Other modules functionality also. Now, tomorrow some problem occurred. Tomorrow some problem occurred. Tomorrow some problem occurred. I want to deploy the latest code to the server. I need to stop the whole project. I need to stop the whole project in order to do the deployment. So like that, there are so many drawbacks are available if we go for monolith architecture. There are so many drawbacks available if you go for monolith architecture. Can you guys tell me what are the drawbacks of the monolith? Can you tell me some drawbacks that you are identifying here? Yeah, guys, can you identify what are the problems? What are the problems we are going to face with this monolith architecture? Code changes. Integration is difficult. Code changes integration is difficult. Okay. Classes will be tightly coupled. Classes will be tightly coupled. For any change, whole project should be deployed. For any change, whole project should be redeployed. I have done some change in the code. Now, can I deploy only particular change or I need to do the redeployment of complete project? For any change, whole project should be redeployed. Maintenance is difficult. Maintenance is difficult. Code changes integration is difficult task. Code changes integration is difficult task. Classes will be tightly coupled. Okay. For any change, whole project should be redeployed. Maintenance is difficult. Single point of failure. Single point of failure. If anything wrong, then whole project is going to be down. If there is a small issue in the project, then the whole project is going to be down. So this is monolith architecture based application, guys. This is monolith architecture based application. Now, if you develop your project using monolith architecture, then these all are the problems that you are going to face. These all are the problems. Now, whole functionality, that is, I want to develop one e-com application, e-commerce app I want to build. Now in the e-commerce application, products will be available, cart will be available, checkout will be available, payment will be available, tracking will be available, shipping will be available, order cancellations will be available, order cancellations will be available, and reports generations will be available. All these things should be taken care in one project. If you combine everything in one project, then that project is called as monolith architecture based application. When you go for monolith architecture based application, these all are the drawbacks. Code changes, integration is difficult, classes will be tightly coupled. For any change you make in the project, then entire project should be redeployed. Maintenance of the project is difficult. Single point of failure, if there is some problem, the whole project is going to stop. Now this is monolith architecture based application. When I do monolith architecture based application, it means when I do commit of the change in the project, I don't know where that change is going to impact. We need to do the proper analysis. If I modify some file, which functionality is going to affect? If I modify some file, I'm modifying some DAO class, in which places the DAO is getting used, where it is getting affected, what functionalities are getting affected. All these things we have to analyze properly. Got my point? Now this is monolith architecture based application. Now do you think that are we going to follow this architecture to develop the projects in the industry? Do you think that we are going to develop the projects using this monolith architecture nowadays in the industry? No. What is the alternate for the monolith now? What is alternate for the monolith now? Microservices. What is the alternate for the monolith now? Microservices is the alternate for the monolith. What we are going to do in the microservices? In the microservices, product API will be available. One product API will be developed. Okay, one cart API will be developed. Cart functionality, product functionality will be developed in one API. Cart functionality developed in one API. Payment functionality will be developed in one API. Everything is a separate API. Everything is a separate API. Payment API is available. Reports API, cancellation API, cancel API will be available. Tracking API will be available. Payment API will be available. Reports API will be available. Everything, every functionality is developing as a small API. Every API will contain limited functionality. A dedicated independent API we are creating for our backend application. Multiple REST APIs I'm creating. Multiple REST APIs I'm creating. Here user interface will be available. Nothing but UI will be available for our application. From the UI, these APIs will be executed. When user want to see all the products from the UI, when he click on the button display products, that UI will communicate with the product API. It will get the products and it will display. Then when user want to add the products to the cart, it will go to the cart API. When user want to do the payment functionality will be handled by payment API. When user want to cancel some order, it will go to cancel API. When administrator want to generate the reports, it will go to reports API. Now, am I developing everything in one project, or I'm developing the things by dividing into multiple APIs now? I'm dividing them into multiple APIs. Are you able to follow me? Are you able to follow me? Whatever the functionality, whatever the code that is required for products display, that is developed as part of the product API, whatever the code that is required for the cart, that is implemented in the cart API, the functionality related to payment implemented in the payment API, functionality related to order cancel implemented in the cancel API, functionality related to reports, it is implemented in the reports API. Everything is implemented as a separate REST API. Now, this REST API we will create by using Spring Boot REST API. This REST API we are developing by using Spring Boot. Sir, where we will use the Spring Boot in the project? Spring Boot is used to develop these REST APIs only. This is one Spring Boot REST API. This is one Spring Boot REST API. This is Spring Boot REST API, Spring Boot REST API, Spring Boot REST API, Spring Boot REST API. The whole project is a microservices architecture. Spring Boot with microservices, nothing but we are going to develop the REST APIs in the project by following microservices architecture. How to develop a project with microservices architecture using Spring Boot, that is the main agenda of this course. What is our course name, guys? Can you ping me in the chat box? What is our course name? Our course name is Spring Boot and Microservices. Now, Spring Boot is one approach to develop the Spring applications with the less configuration. Microservices is a architecture. Microservices is a architecture. Now, are you getting the clarity? What you are going to learn? Are you going to get that clarity? What you are going to learn? Now, what is the main aim of our course? What you are going to learn in this course? In this course, you are going to learn how to develop the project by using microservices architecture and how to develop the REST APIs by using Spring Boot. That is the main agenda. Now, can you tell me what are the advantages of this microservices architecture? Can anyone tell me advantages of this microservices architecture? Come on, guys. What are the advantages of going with this microservices architecture? Can you tell me? Can you tell me what are the advantages of going with this microservices architecture? Any idea? Any guesses? Any idea? Any guesses? What are the advantages of going with microservice architecture? Project functionality is distributed to multiple APIs. It is not one project here. There are several APIs we are developing. Every API is one project. Functionality distributed to project functionality distributed to several APIs. Maintenance is easy. Maintenance is easy. Tomorrow, I want to make some changes to product API. Do I need to modify the remaining APIs code, or I will modify only product API code? Identifying the issue is very easy. Issue fixing is easy. Issue fixing is easy. Issue fixing is easy. Deployment is easy. Deployment is easy. Deployment is easy because if I make a change to particular API, do I need to deploy all the APIs and only modified API I need to deploy? If I make any change to the project, do I need to do the whole project deployment or only modified API I need to deploy? Only modified API I need to deploy. Modified API we need to deploy. If I make some changes in the code, it is related to only this API. Other APIs are not going to affect. Maintenance of the project is very easy, guys. And I have here another advantage also. I will tell you another advantage also here. This API I developed by using Java. Okay, this API I developed by using Python. Is there any problem? Can we develop REST API by using Python also? Can we develop REST API by using .NET also? Can we use multiple technologies in one project? Can we use multiple technologies in one project? If you go for microservice architecture, yes, you can use multiple technologies to develop multiple APIs also, no problem, because everything is a REST API, everything is a distributed application. In the real time, some projects are like this also. Even in my project, this is there. In my project, this is available. My project is having Java, .NET and Python, because long back they implemented a payment gateway by using .NET. Now already that is available. Why to develop once again? We are using the payment API which is available in the .NET. Some APIs, we have the shortage of the Java developers, so we have the Python developers. I gave the Python API development for the Python team. They developed a cancellation API in the Python that I can use in my project, because multiple technologies also we can use to develop our APIs. That is another advantage in the microservices. When you go for monolith architecture,
Can I use Java, Python, .NET in one project? Can I use Java, .NET, Python in one project in the monolith architecture? Impossible. Impossible. You can't do that. You should be strict to one language only. You want to go with the Java, then you complete the project with Java only. You want to go with the Python, you start and complete the project with the Python only. Multiple technologies cannot be used in the monolith architecture. Whereas in the microservices architecture, we are not developing the whole functionality in one project. We are dividing the project functionality into multiple APIs like this. Every API is one project, belongs to one application. E-commerce application, several functionalities. Functionalities are divided into several APIs. Several APIs. So if you go with this microservices architecture, then maintenance of the project is very easy. Issue fixing is very easy. Deployment is very easy. Functional APIs are loosely coupled. Loosely coupling will be available. Loosely coupling will be available. Multiple technologies can be used in the single project to complete it quickly. Multiple development teams we can recruit and we can ask them to do the development quickly. These all are the advantages of going for microservices architecture. If we develop all the functionalities in single project, then it is called as monolith architecture based application. Microservices architecture, functionality will be divided into several APIs. Functionality will be divided into several APIs. Functionality will be divided into several APIs. Are you able to understand the difference between monolith architecture and microservices architecture? Monolith means everything in one place. Microservices means multiple REST APIs. So here we are going to learn a project with the microservices architecture using Spring Boot. All right, guys, now able to understand what is monolith architecture, what is microservice architecture, what is full stack development, what is full stack development, what is the backend development, what is backend development, what is the front end development, what is monolith architecture, what is microservices architecture. Are you guys clear with this? Are you guys clear with this? So now finally you got the clarity what we are going to learn in this course. What we are going to learn in this course now. Can you tell me what is the main agenda of this course? What is the main agenda of this course? Developing the project with microservices architecture using Spring Boot REST APIs. That is called SBMS, Spring Boot with microservices. Good. All right. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you.